Development Committee will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Esposito. Here. Sorry, please. Mr. Minero. Here. Mr. Hanna. Here. Chairman Howland.
Here.
Mr. McCann.
Here. Is there anyone signed up for the public forum?
No, sir.
Is there anyone present who is not signed up to speak who would like to address the committee at this time? There being no one, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. You have the March 23rd, 2010 minutes before you. They will stand approved unless the clerk is notified of any changes by the end of the day. Stand approved. The next item of the agenda is new business. Mr. Clerk.
Referral 10-0129.
Moved by legislator Hanna, seconded by legislator McCann. Is there any discussion? Legislator Hanna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's my understanding that the MCIDC is funded with fees based on from projects like this. Do we expect significant fees on this project?
The chair, yes, that is correct.
Thank you. And through the chair, could you shed a little bit of light on how many jobs that this particular project is expected to generate?
Sure. Through the chair, for this particular project, there will be 150 new jobs created over 3 years. That does not include the construction jobs.
And through the chair, that's just jobs that are created in the facility that is being built.
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you.
Legislator Esposito.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the administration, the fees that Legislator Hanna referred to, what is the percentage the IDC will gather from the bond issue we're approving today?
Through the chair, it's 1% of up to $20 million of the project. And over $20 million, it's 1/4% of the fee. And that includes on projects over $50 million, the legal fee.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, how does that compare to what the IDA would receive the way it used to be done for nonprofit facilities like this before we had to change the law a few months ago?
Through the chair, you mean through the IDA?
Yes, through the IDA. Yeah.
Same fee.
Same exact schedule. Okay. And through you, Mr. Chairman, are the revenues that we receive from that going to go towards, I think we've talked about this in the past, the fund balance for the IDC to be used towards economic development programs in the same way the IDA would have been done, again, previously?
Yeah. Through the chair, yes, it will go to our programs.
Okay. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, are there other uses of that revenue other than economic development programs?
Through the chair, there's our legal and accounting fees.
Okay. So just fees and grants and loans that we distribute through your department?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chairman, if I may request, and there's literally no hurry on this, but just out of curiosity so I can, again, continue to better understand this process, if you could provide us with a list of what the programs are that are funded through the IDC and the IDA, and also an example maybe in the last year or two of the actual projects that we've funded through those programs to which companies, that would be very helpful just to understand how this money is being used that we garner from these sorts of bond issues now that we're using the IDC.
Through the chair, we'll take care of that.
Thank you very much. If I may continue, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if this was unique to this project or something unique that struck me, but part of this bond issue will be used to pay off old DASNY bonds that Unity Hospital has used on previous projects that they still have outstanding. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that is correct.
And through you, Mr. Chairman, is that a common practice to use nonprofit tax-exempt bonds that the IDA or now the IDC would have offered in the past?
Through the chair, yes, you can refinance.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, are there restrictions? Does it have to be used for similar type projects to expand the facilities, and as long as it fits in the parameters of what we would use the original bond for?
Correct. That is correct.
Terrific. And through you, Mr. Chairman, I assume that this is obviously a very large project, and it's a great project just in terms of the amount of jobs it brings, and also it's a wonderful facility to have on the west side. Is this project being done in cooperation with all of the hospital system's efforts to right-size the amount of beds so that there's not an overexpansion in our area of hospital rooms? And this may not be the appropriate venue to ask that, but I'm just curious to know if the IDC is taking any of that into account.
Through the chair, that is correct. There are approvals that need to be in place.
Okay. And through you, Mr. Chairman, is that done, is it the 2020 Commission that's sort of monitoring that whole process throughout the area?
Through the chair, I do have somebody here from Unity Health that maybe could address that better than I.
Okay, that would be great. Or whatever the nature of the Department of Health's approvals would be, just to get a sense to make sure this fits with what we want to be doing community-wide for the hospital systems. That'd be great.
Could we have the gentleman from Unity Health step forward?
Sorry to put you on the spot. Go right to the podium.
Please state your name and position.
My name's Bob Donahue. I'm Vice President of Corporate Services at Unity Health System.
Did you hear the question?
Sure did. There was actually a substantial effort that went on behind the scenes facilitated by the Finger Lakes Health Systems Agency.
Right. Yeah.
They spun off and created this subcommittee as referred to, as you stated, the 2020 Commission. The 2020 Commission took a look at all three health systems proposals, worked closely with the Department of Health, and ended up agreeing with the folks on who was going to move forward at what pace and to what scope. So there was a substantial amount of collaboration, even so much so that there's a long-range plan to keep that group together and entertain the future requests for additional licensed beds along the way. So it was instrumental to the getting this project approved.
So the scope of this project, the 75 new beds or whatever else, I'm sorry, however, 256 beds, is in the scope of what everyone agreed to and has been decided by the Department of Health.
Right. What the Finger Lakes Agency did was they approved a scope and a portion of each of our requested beds to be licensed, and then a process in collaboration with the Department of Health to increase licensed beds over time.
Okay, thank you. And again, if I could, Mr. Chairman, ask, the refinancing or the paying off of the old DASNY bonds, is there a savings that is passed on to the hospital? Do you have a less interest rate to pay off with these bonds as opposed to the DASNY bonds that makes it advantageous for you to pay it off now?
There's some slight savings there, but not significant. It was more around debt consolidation than operational savings.
All right.
And interest rates may change tomorrow, so
Sure.
it's tough to predict.
Great. Well, thank you very much for coming up on the spot. Appreciate it.
No problem.
Mr. Donahue, thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
I believe those are all my questions on this referral, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Legislator Monero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to know, you did mention that there were going to be 150 new jobs aside from the construction jobs. Do we have any idea how many construction jobs will be created by the project?
Through the chair, approximately 250.
200, through you, Mr. Chair, 250 full-time positions, full-time equivalents?
Full-time equivalents.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. If I could ask one more question through you to the administration. The IDC, I think we've stated this before when we switched this model, they will still have the same local labor requirements as the IDA had and all of the other guidelines that your administration's put in place along those lines?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? The item carries. Is there any other matters to come before the committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Legislator Esposito.
Thank you. Last month I mentioned a letter I sent to you and to Ms. Seil about CareStream and the Comida benefits they'd received. I'd like to thank Mr. Helfer for his response on that issue. There was some useful information, particularly historical information in that letter. However, I'm a little more curious, and if I could, through you, Mr. Chairman, request at some point in the future a little more detailed breakdown of the requirements, either in terms of investment by CareStream or jobs that they create, versus at the time the deal was reached versus what they're at now or expected to be at now? And also, how much of the commuter benefits have been distributed? Were they all up front at the time of financing, or are they given out in a way to ensure that they're meeting the benchmarks they need to meet? And then finally, the numbers in the letter, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, were statewide numbers or total employment numbers for Carestream. I'm more specifically interested in the local employment numbers at the facilities that Comida was helping to finance. So if I could just respectfully request some additional information to better understand the nature of this deal. Of course, as you allude to in your letter, we're grateful for Carestream's investment here, but this committee should take care to ensure that taxpayer dollars are being invested properly and that we're meeting all the benchmarks we say we're going to meet.
I believe that can be done.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'll be happy to work with Ms. Seil to get a response for it.
Thank you very much.
Is there any further business? There being no further business, the April 26, 2010 meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committees stands adjourned. The next meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee is scheduled for May 24th, 2010.